read அதோட பெனிஃபிட்ஸ் எல்லாமே வந்து அவர் வந்து ஒரு பியூட்டிஃபுல் ஒரு வீடியோவில் வந்து சம்மரைஸ் பண்ணியிருக்காரு. தட் வீடியோ இஸ் டெட்எக்ஸ் வீடியோ. யூடியூப்ல டெமோக்ரட்டைசிங் எஜுகேஷன் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு டைட்டிலில் அவர் வந்து தெளிவாக பேசியிருக்காரு. ஸோ யூ கைஸ் ஷுட் ஆல் ஷுட் கோ அண்ட் செக் அவுட் தட் வீடியோ. இட் இஸ் ஸோ ஐ ஓப்பனிங் அண்ட் ஸோ இன்ஃபர்மேட்டிவ். And the rural infrastructure in the place where he is from and how it is all working in Tamil Nadu and India, it was so informative when I went through that video. You guys should check out that. இன்னொரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கான ஃபேக்ட் என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, அவர் வந்து சைல்ட்ஹுட் டேஸ்லேயே வந்து அவரோட ஃபேவரட் சப்ஜெக்ட் மேக்ஸ். Like I know many of us in this conference, we have maths as our favorite subject. அவரோட ஒரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் ஸ்டோரி நான் என்ன கேள்விப்பட்டேன்னா, அவர் வந்து when he was in high school, அவர் வந்து he went on to even solve and get accustomed more with MSc Max problems also. MSc Max na post graduation level. Our high school வந்து he got interested and he got into those max problems and began solving அப்படிங்கிறது வந்து ஒரு 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 ப்ராடிஜி கைண்ட் ஆஃப் ஸ்டேஷன் மாதிரின்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன். இன்னொரு இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் நான் வந்து இன்னொன்று என்ன கேள்விப்பட்டேன்னா, அவர் வந்து சைல்ட்ஹுட் டேஸ்ல வந்து he is not into movies. He is not at all interested in movies. Whenever there is a movie outing, when he goes with friends and relatives, அவர் என்ன சொல்லுவார்னா, hey, you guys go and watch the movie. I will just wait outside. You guys finish it off and come. ஆனா இப்ப பாருங்க, அவர் வந்து அவரோட கெரியர் அண்ட் ஹிஸ் டெக்னாலஜிக்கல் அட்வான்ஸ்மெண்ட் அண்ட் ஹிஸ் ஸ்டடிங் ஆல் இன் மூவிஸ். ஸோ though he is not interested in movies in those days, through his work and his technological advancement, he is making us watch his work. So சான் அண்டோனியோ தமிழ் சங்கம் சார்பாக உங்களை சாட்ஸ் யூத் தளத்திலிருந்து உங்களை வரவேற்பதில் பெருமிதம் கொள்கிறோம். வெல்கம் சார்.
நன்றி.
ரொம்ப நன்றி அசோக். That was a very insightful introduction, and it looks like you know him much more than a lot of people here. So I would request our youth club members, both Advika and Shaivi, to take over from here. And we have Advika Shankar, who is 10th grader, and she is into communication and arts. And I request her to welcome our speaker. And after the session, I would request Shaivi, who is 11th grader, who is also into animation and media. She would be the facilitator for the Q&A session. She has a huge list prepared for our speaker. And also I would request all the audience to post, and she will take care of it. Over to you, Advika.
When we get to see a story being brought to life on the big screen or even at home, there are many people behind the scenes responsible for making our movie experiences enjoyable and entertaining. And it is an extreme pleasure to have one of our own who has played a big part here with us today. Coming from humble beginnings to ultimately winning an Oscar award, Mr. Kotolongo Leon has shown us what is possible with hard work and determination, and he is a great role model for all of us. Mr. Leon is a software architect at Sony Pictures Imageworks. His film credits include The Michelles vs. the Machines, Academy Award nominated feature Over the Moon, and Academy Award winning Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In 2016, he received an Academy Award for Scientific and Technical Achievement for the design, engineering, and continuous development of Sony Pictures Imageworks ItView technology. Apart from this, Mr. Leon is also passionate about youth and education, and as part of the Youth Translators Initiative from Vetrivel Foundation, he organizes volunteering opportunities for Tamil teenagers across USA to help their counterparts in Indian underprivileged conditions. With that, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Kotolongo Leon to begin his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Advika, for the lovely introduction, and thank you, Ashok, for the kind words. Looks like you have a lot of insider information. And thank you all for inviting me today. It's really a great pleasure. It's wonderful. My favorite time is talking with the youth, especially Tamil youth in the USA. I have a daughter who is in senior. He's a senior in high school here. So I have witnessed, you are in the environment that you are growing up in, your challenges and all that we have witnessed from up close. So talking to you is a great pleasure and privilege. So what I wanted to do today was basically, quickly go through some of the common things people ask, right? So the reason I'm here is because of the Academy Award that was given in 2016. So some things that typically come up. So I'll try to answer most of them. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end also. If you guys want to dig deeper into any of those things, we can definitely do that. So I'll start off with a little bit about journey, where I'm from and how it relates to what I do in my free time nowadays and things like that. And then we'll go a little bit more into, just what goes on behind the scenes in the movie making, right? We see the final product in big theaters and blockbuster movies and all that, but all the work that goes behind it, right? So we'll go a little bit of that. And then I will talk about the main topic today, which is like if some of you are interested, want to go into especially technical careers, what kind of opportunities are available, so that you can start thinking about it. Many of you are probably in high school, started to think about college and careers and all that. So just a very quick introduction to things that are available for you as of now. Then I'll go into a little bit about another common thing that people ask about, which is like what was your secret to success? What helped you and what is your insight? So I'll share a little bit about what I think helped me personally. So hopefully that's of use to you. And then finally, I talked about the Young Translator initiative that I'm part of, and I want to say why we are doing it, what we are doing, and how you guys can also potentially participate in it. Right. So that's the agenda today. So I have a slide presentation. Let me try to share my screen. Oh, I think somebody needs to give me a permission to share my screen.
Only are you checking on giving the
Yeah, is this helping you? Were you able to share now?
Oh, there you go. Okay, it's
okay.
working.
Thank
Perfect.
you. Sorry about it.
No worries. Okay, so let me share it. Let me know if you guys are able to see my.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are able to see.
Okay, cool. All right. So we'll very quickly go through some background, right? So I currently work as a software architect. The company I'm working for is Sony Pictures ImageWorks. We live in Los Angeles, California, with my wife and my daughter. Background, very quickly, yeah, I'm born in Tuticorin, but pretty much I was brought up in Coimbatore. I did my school, primary school, and college in Coimbatore. Mr. Ashok briefly mentioned that I went to the Tamil medium government schools. This was also highlighted pretty predominantly, mainly because of the challenges in such schools, right? So now, if you guys know about in USA, they call like inner city schools, right? So a lot of challenges, poor infrastructure and things like that. So it's just a very small village, and it's not uncommon. You will, like, if you talk to the people that here, it's very common. A lot of engineers like me have come from similar backgrounds, but it's still a challenging environment for someone to get a good education, right? So it relates to some of what I do nowadays in my free time. So we'll go back to this at the end of the presentation. I went to college, my undergrad in this college is called PhD College of Technology in Coimbatore. And after that, I briefly worked for a couple of years in India, in New Delhi, in a company called Softech. Then I came to do my master's in Arizona. I went to Arizona State University. At that time, I was starting to get interested in movies, especially I was very drawn to technology from my childhood. But when after finishing my undergrad, I was looking for what do I want to do next? What kind of things I want to specialize? And the movie Jurassic Park came at the time. Like many of you may have seen it or heard about it. And it was a big deal. That is like first time people are seeing like lifelike dinosaurs in big screen. And now I was really drawn to that. And when I saw a documentary about it, they explained so many engineering work that went behind it, right? And for me, it was like, it's great. So as a scientist, as a technician, there are ways to get involved in art and do something amazing like that. So that's how I got into the movie industry. So I came to ASU to do my MS, specializing in computer graphics, knowing that I wanted to go into this field. And after that, I wanted to work in a movie studio, but I couldn't quite get my foot in. So I started working for a games company. It's called DreamWorks Interactive. I worked there for like 6 months. I had a lot of fun, but I also knew I'm not really into games. I really wanted to work in movies. So after 6 months, I switched to Sony Pictures ImageWorks. This was back in 1996, more than 25 years ago. And I've been here ever since. So it's been a lot of fun. And as I said, the reason I'm here mainly is because of this Academy Award in 2016. So a lot of people ask about this specific award because there's this big gala that happens every February. All the actors, actresses, and directors, they all go on this red carpet, and there's like a huge event that happens. So that is for creative awards, right? So that's given to people that worked on specific movies that came in the year before, right? So this year, the Oscar Awards will be given for people who worked on movies in 2021, right? So there is a counterpart to it, which is technical awards, right? So this happens in a separate event, a few weeks before the main Oscar event. But so this one is for science and technology, right? This is not given to any specific movie because Academy recognizes that a lot of times the technologies take a long time to develop, right? For example, you can think of the movie camera, the motion picture camera itself. So there was a Scientech award given, many years back, right? Because without camera, there's no movies, obviously. So they don't give it for any specific year or even a very specific movie, because these technologies in these companies develop, they can be used for multiple companies, multiple movies, things like that, right? So what they look for is things that made a big impact, like what technologies were developed in the last so many years, which made a huge impact in the art of movie making, and it pushes the boundaries forward, right? So they recognize things like that. So and it's been done since 1931. So that's one thing we can tell about Hollywood, right? Like a lot of industries, technology drives a lot of industries nowadays. It has made a big revolution, but Hollywood is one of those things where they really recognized it from very early on, and they recognized it. So the product I was working on was called ItView, and this is the one that won the award in 2016. And why, right? So that's another common question that people ask, like, what was special about it? Why did they recognize it, right? So why is mostly because, if you understand any big endeavor, right? Especially, when you talk about a big budget movie like that, it is a huge endeavor, a lot of money involved, a lot of people involved, right? So it takes literally a huge army to make a big movie like Spider-Man, right? And the work is done in many places over a long time, right? Sometimes it can go back 10 years, 15 years like that. But typically around 3 to 4 years period. And initially it will start with like, one person, his vision or her vision, ideas, stories, and then there's a story discussion, and then they start writing things down. It kind of grows from there. Like once they get the budget, and then they start implementing it. And so at the time of the actual production, so there will be thousands of people working in multiple cities of the world, and they all have to work in synchrony, right? So they all have to implement the vision of the person who originally came up with. So that means so much information, so much work needing to be coordinated. And this kind of collaboration hubs became very important, right? So it used to be like in the Sony Pictures ImageWorks in my own career, we all used to be in one building, like just one building, about 300 or 400 people, and we are the ones who will, take part in all the production. But now we are split into multiple companies, multiple places, different time zones and everything. So how do you bring all of them into a single page? How do you communicate? If you're an artist, what are the things I'm supposed to work on? What are the notes for my work that I did recently? And if you're a creative, if you are the ones giving notes, you say, okay, you have like hundreds of artists working under you. How do you review their work? How do you tell them what to do next and things like that? So there are many products like KitView that do similar thing. Every company has its own. There's also commercial software available nowadays. But KitView was one of the earliest one. We pioneered it a long time ago, and it really influenced the industry in how these products work, right? So Academy recognized that in 2016, and that's the reason they gave the award. So let's switch gears and we talk a little bit about just the various technologies being used in just not even movie industry. We'll start from what we call the entertainment industry, right? So when we talk about entertainment industry, in general, we're talking about things like movies, TV, games industry, which is huge, right? So games industry is multiple orders of bigger than movies. Of late, there is a lot of streaming companies, Netflix, Disney Plus, stuff like that, and they have their own platform for introducing all this content. Virtual reality is coming more and more. So there's explosion of need for just content, right? Quality content that need to be made. And, there's opportunities for everyone, whether you want to pursue an artistic career or a technical career. There's just like tons and tons of opportunities available. So my background, as you know, is movie industry. So specifically, in the what we call as post-production, right? So production, what does it typically means in our industry is like, you have seen these film crews going into location, right? People going into Grand Canyon or New York or things like that with like a lot of people, actors acting on the scene, or can be in a closed stage in a set. So that's what they call production. Post-production is often, we take all those movie scanned images, and then we add things on top of it, right? If you take a look at Spider-Man movie, for example. So obviously there's a lot of live action, real actors in real scenes, real locations, and then they take it, and then we need to put, this computer graphic Spider-Man, right? The Spider-Man flying around Manhattan and doing all these stunts, right? So that obviously we can have a real person doing that. So it's cost effective to do it in computer. So all this work happens in post-production. And there is also movies which never has any live action part of it, right? So fully animated movies, things like Surf's Up that you see here, or in many of the Pixar movies that you may have seen, right? So there is no actual actor involved. Everything happens completely in computers, right? So starting from the story to final rendered images, everything is in computers. So our company does post-production in the VFX and animation, right? So we do both live action movies, putting CG on top of it, as well as fully animated movies. So let's take a look at, what happens, how do we do this, right? And if you guys know assembly line, right, it's a very common thing. If you are making cars, for example, you may have seen some of videos how they make cars, right? It starts with nuts and bolts at the very beginning, and then people add more and more stuff as it comes through the pipeline. Then at the very end, people put the wheels and doors and stuff like that. Out comes the car, right? So movie making is no different, right? It starts, as I said, with somebody's idea, somebody's imagination, right? And then they write it down, and then they create something called script. From the script, everything comes into play, right? So at the post-production, similarly, if it's a live action movie, we will get the scanned images of all the camera, right? And then from there, we take it and we add things on top of it until the final movie is made. So there is so many different departments and I'm just mentioning like 4 departments here. These, what you can call them as like the major ones, right? There's subdivision within each of them. People make careers just doing that one part all their life, right? But these are the main ones. So let's quickly go through each of them. So the first one, you can think of it as a modeling, right? What is a model? Model is a digital character, right? So, the closest analogous can be a sculptor, right? So in fact, a lot of modelers come from sculpting background, right? So these are artists. Sometimes they actually go to art school, they learn how to sculpt using clay, right? So, or some other materials. So their skill is all about creating this kind of characters. And in the computer world, obviously, they don't use sculpture clay, but they use software tools to do this, right? So they use the 3D animation modeling software to create these digital models. The next one is roughly animation, right? So if you're an animator, what do? You take these models and you make it move, right? So their skill is almost equivalent to an actor. Like, so in fact, a lot of animators, they actually start by acting scenes, right? So they'll be given a script, there'll be a dialogue, and they are given a digital model, and they need to make that model act according to the scene, according to the script, right? So a lot of times they'll go in front of camera like this, and they'll act the whole scene, they'll record themselves, or they'll have a buddy to act along with them. And then they'll take these videos and they have to transform the whole thing into these digital characters. So obviously there's tons of skill involved, there's acting skill involved, and it's not necessarily always trying to implement what is physically possible, right? If you have seen cartoons, a lot of times the cartoons can do things that are impossible in physical life, right? You may have seen lots of cartoons where somebody will jump off the cliff, they'll hang in the air for like a few seconds, then they'll realize they're hanging there and they'll fall down, right? So for comic effect, the director may want all these kind of effects, right? So it gives you a lot more freedom. So you do all those creative ideas and then you implement it. And then lighting. So again, there is a real counterpart to it. Like if you are on set, there are people who are specializing in just lighting, right? And lights play a very important role in movies, right? So if it is a horror movie or a scary movie, it will be typically very dark, very little lighting, or if the lights are coming on, they're coming for very specific purposes. Whereas if it is a family movie, children's movie, a lot of bright lights, right? It's very cheerful. So the lights can really set the mood of the movie, mood of the story. So there are people who basically spend their entire career just doing this. So their job is to place lights in the scene and create that kind of environment and the ambient that the filmmaker is looking for. And then compositing. So their job is to combine things, right? If you have worked on software like Photoshop, for example, you may have heard these layers, right? So a lot of times doing everything at once can be very complicated and it's impossible, right? So, imagine you are a movie maker trying to animate a ship going through rough waters in the ocean, right? And while there's a fight going on top of the ship, on the deck of the ship. So there could be 100 people just working on the ocean itself, right? Just animating ocean, storm coming on, like lots of wind and all that kind of stuff happening. And there's a ship itself going through these waters. And then the people on top of it fighting with each other. So all these different teams are working on all these things separately. But as a compositor, you're putting them all together into like a single frame, right? Or single sequence. So you need to make them all combine. You need to make it look as if they all were done at the same time, right? As somebody created all of them at the same time. So there's a lot of art to that. So if you look at the movie, typical Hollywood movie is about 2 hours, right? It has about 200,000 frames. Each of these frames takes tons and tons of work, right? So, and when we have these computers rendering these images, sometimes these frames can take multiple hours, even like days to render. And it's just for one render, right? So they render it, they look at the output, somebody doesn't like something about it, they have to go back, change something, render again, like that. So it's a very iterative process and it takes lot of time and effort to do it. And yeah, as I mentioned, there's a lot of people just work on a very short clip, what we call them as shorts. So the short could be anywhere from like 2 seconds to like 30 seconds, 40 seconds. So they chunk them up into a lot of shots, and hundreds of people can work on just that one shot for months and months. So yeah, now let's talk about what carriers are available. What kind of, again, we are talking very general terms here. There's a lot of nuances to any of this, but to give you a general idea, right? So at the top, you can say is, what we call them as specialists, right? So a lot of times, depending on the story, there's probably need for a lot of specialists. Let's say somebody is taking a movie about, going to Mars, right? So the filmmakers, they want to make it as realistic as possible, right? So they may hire people from NASA, for example, or they may hire people, in universities doing astrophysics, stuff like that. So they want to get their advice. So when they write the story, they want to make sure that all the facts, numbers being used in the movie are really accurate, that it's really realistic, right? And they pay a lot of attention to it. Or, you are making a Titanic movie, you are going underwater to the bottom of the floor, telling a story, and, then you hire oceanographers and stuff like that. So they go to universities, they go to PhD, or like industry experts and so on. And as a technical person, you get to play a role in the movie. The biggest chunk comes from software engineers, right? So, if you are a coder, if you're a software engineer, there's tons of opportunities, right? So every part of movie production nowadays is driven by software. And, and one thing about movie making is it's always something new. Even a director always wants to push the boundary, right? So they don't want to repeat anything that was done before, either by themselves or by other people. They want to do things differently. So a change is needed every time. And the next part is systems engineers. So what systems engineers do is they not just build computers, right? So that used to be the case, but nowadays you don't have to physically build computers. It's all available for you. But things have become very complicated, right? There's databases, there is network, there is storage, there is cloud, there is all kinds of vendors available. So, based on the needs of a particular movie production, they need to put everything together, right? So, and there's, given a budget and everything. So within that, they put things together. So if you go into, for example, hardware engineering and stuff like that, there's plenty of opportunities in any industry, specifically for the entertainment industry also. And the next category, what we call them as technical directors or TDs, right? So these people often work directly in actual movie production. All the other people that we mentioned before, like software engineer, for example, I'm a software engineer, right? But I don't typically work on a specific movie. I do, but my focus is really creating tools that are used in all movies that Sony works on, right? But TDs often work on actual movie production itself, and they work side by side with the artists, right? Their job is to make whatever is needed for that artist to happen, right? So they may create very custom tool, or they'll create a lot of scripting to just make their specific artist life easier. And then there's tons of support technician role, right? So a lot of people start out in the industry like that. So they just, they watching all the renders that go through, or making sure the disk's not filled up, or there is infinite amount of like various support roles these technicians play. What I have seen is a lot of students just straight out of college, they love the industry, they want to work on it. They may not quite get the job as a software engineer or system engineer to begin with, or they want to go into more of a artistic career, but they have a technical background, but they want to really get into this. They start as support technicians, right? And they get their foot in the door. They do a little bit of work. They get to know the people. They make contacts, and then they grow into other roles, right? So that's another career path for someone who wants to work in the industry. So as I said, we'll switch gears a little bit now, and then we, people ask, what's your secret? What was, what helped you and things like that. So I work for a Japanese company, right? Sony, and we get these newsletters often. And, sometimes they talk about ancient wisdoms and Japanese words and all that. There's a lot of like philosophical content that comes from headquarters, right? And this one word that kind of like stuck in my head for a long time, right? And I often use this when people ask me, what is your secret for success? Or what do you advise for young people to do? And the word is ikigai, right? Some of you may have heard about it. And you can do a Google search on it. And there's books written about it. There's a lot of stuff behind it, right? And what it literally means in English, this I think is one of the translations. There's all other translations available. It's a reason to live, right? It's also called a reason to get up in the morning, right? What makes you get up in the morning every day? What drives you? What gives you meaning to your life, right? And so if you do a Google search, you will see a diagram like this. This diagram is often used to explain ikigai, right? So imagine these 4 circles, right? Concentric circles. And in circle number 1 is what you love, right? So this can be anything from, drawing or coding or dancing, whatever, right? Anything that you want to do, anything that you love. On the second circle is what you are good at, right? So some people are just naturally good at something, right? It's also known as talent, right? So talent can be nurtured, talent can be like practiced and all that. But sometimes you also know when you are born, you are just born with some talent, right? For example, let's say like, I like comedy, right? I like stand-up comedy. I love watching it. I spend hours watching it. But I'm not good at it. I know I'm not good at it. I will never be good at it, no matter how hard I try, right? So what you want to do is, find the common thing about it, things that you love to do, but things that you also have a talent for, right? And some people find this when they are really young, right? So you may be very young, and like I have seen like 5-year-olds who are going to be future stand-up comedians. They can just talk so well. It just comes naturally to them, right? And so you want to find something that that you love and you are good at it. Sometimes it takes a long time to find out. Sometimes you may find out what you love and what you want to do and what you're good at when you're 50 years old. Doesn't matter. At some point you try to find out. And the number 3 is what the world really needs, right? So let's say I'm 50 years old now. I want to be a stand-up comedian. And I spend next 15 years practicing it, right? And maybe I'm good at it, but does the world really need another stand-up comedian, right? Because there's plenty already. And a slight correlate to that is like what you can get paid for, like what can you actually make money out of, right? Is the world needing it, and are people willing to, actually financially pay you for it, right? So you want to find all the mix of all these things, and in the middle is your ikigai, right? So if you find things that you love, that you have a talent for, and somebody is willing to like pay you money to do it, so that it's worthy of your time to do it, that's where you want to be. And for me, it was science and technology and combination of art and everything. I found that love very young in my age, and I was very fortunate to be nurtured to go in that path and find myself doing it. And that's what makes me get up in the morning every day, and that's what makes me keep going, right? So that's that. So slightly on the same topic, I want to talk about just the thought of giving back to the community, right? So this is one thing I tell all young people is don't forget your roots, right? So my root, as I mentioned before, is I come from these like really small rural villages in India, and I will also always associate myself with it, and I never want to forget about it. Your root is also, right? Your parents typically come from India, and there's a lot of things to be proud of, right? You should always be proud, and even though you are growing up here, and you are used to all the resources and comforts in this country, don't forget that root. And for me, since I grew up in that system, I'm a beneficiary of that education and all the good teachers and all the good fortune I had. I'm pretty passionate about it, right? And you guys may have heard this term digital divide, right? So what it means is just the opportunities available to people like you in the US versus the opportunities available to kids just like you, but they happen to be in another part of the world, right? And it is big, and it is becoming worse and worse over the years. So to me, it's a personal drive. This is something that I do during my free time, which is like, how can we help? Now that we are here, now that we have access to all these different things, we have benefited, we all have benefited. What can we do to help people who are currently in that situation right now, right? And it's a sad state. If you go to India, if you go watch what's going on, especially in the last 2 to 3 years after pandemic, the education has completely stopped. Like people are just like abandoned, so to speak. So what is their future? What are they going to do, right? Are they just like resigned to a life of poverty, right? And another thing that I can relate to is just learning in one's own native language. And for me personally, it has completely helped. And there's a lot of research about it, like just learning in one's mother tongue, especially at the younger age, right? We're not talking about college, we're not talking about even high school, right? In elementary school, in primary school, in middle school, learning in the same language that your parents speak at home. It has huge benefits. It just makes you grasp the concepts better. Your foundation gets so much stronger, and then you build things on top of it. Once you are in high school, once you are later in adulthood, you learn English, then you are able to make use of all the resources in the world. But having that primary education in native language has a huge effect. And my background is technology, right? So I am really drawn to how we can help, especially using technology, right? So there is all kinds of components to it. There's politics, there is culture, there is social issues. There's so many things. But I have a technology background. Can I use technology to solve this? So one idea, not my idea, a lot of people are already working on this same idea, which is a lot of the knowledge is in English. We know that, right? We all use it. You guys use it every day. It's in English. So what can we do to help, which is translate, right? So all the knowledge available in English, this is the output of so many people over centuries, right? And they are all made available for free, most of the cases. It's available. You can access anywhere in the world, but it's in English, right? So the last part is, not available in the native language. So our effort is to translate it and localize it, not just translation. Because if you take something, it's here, it talks about, let's say, US culture and everything. If you translate it exactly as it is, it may not make a lot of sense. You need to adapt it. You need to localize it. That way, the kids there or the adults there can understand and they can use it. So that's why we started Young Translators, right? About 2 years ago, part of the Vitruvial Foundation. What Vitruvial Foundation was doing at that time was they were trying to translate Khan Academy, right? So I don't think I need to explain what Khan Academy is. I'm pretty sure you all have used it. So there are things like that in India, right? There is a commercial software just like Khan Academy made for Indian subjects, but they are very expensive. City kids use it. Wealthy parents can afford it. But things like Khan Academy, it's free, right? So their mission was to translate that into Tamil, make it available, give training to teachers in India, and help kids that way, right? So that's how we got started. So we used young teenagers, just like you, to help in one part of it, which is translating the exercises, not the videos. So the videos were being done by adults. We help translate just the exercises into Tamil. So I'm very proud to say we helped translate all the way from 3rd grade to 8th grade, right? Which was our initial goal. We didn't want to go beyond that. Things get quite complicated after that. So over 2 years, about 60 teenagers worked every week. They worked, they helped translate all the content. So that work is mostly done. So we are branching into other things now. So these are things we are starting to do now. So we are starting to translate TED Ed videos, right? So again, I don't think I need to give any kind of introduction, like all these like really short video clips, especially for TED Ed. They are using these short animated short clips to translate, to explain any given topic. So not just textbooks, it can be general knowledge, it can be about science, it can be about technology, it can be about social issues, it can be about anything, right? So the kids really love it because they get to explore these videos while they are translating. They really get to understand the concept, and they also translate it, right? So there's benefits all around. Another thing they're starting to do is something called Story Beaver. So this is a popular site in India. So what they do is they have people write indigenous stories, right? So anyone can submit stories, but they handpick it. And the idea is to make it free, right? So if you're trying to reach somebody like, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and their very first introduction, right? They have internet access. What do they get drawn to? They get drawn to Hollywood songs or Bollywood songs, right? Or movies. That's the thing they get interested in. How do you bring them into reading and writing and things like that? Through stories, right? So their objective is to write these really short stories, and they convert them into comic books. Okay, they hire actual artists to convert them into comic books, and they make it free, right? And people can write. There's a lot of stories in English. Most of the submissions are in English, but they have people translate them into all the world languages. From Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Hindi to even like French, and so on. So we use our volunteers to convert hand-picked stories into Tamil. And the last one is also something called Kalvi 40. This is a mobile app. It's being promoted by a nonprofit called Bumblebee Trust. This is a new nonprofit doing very good work. So they are doing something very similar to Khan Academy, right? So, but based on Indian textbook, using Indian teachers, they create the original content. And we are trying to create additional educational resources for them, right? So our teenagers have been working on it in the last few months. They all seem to love it. It provides a lot more variety than just doing Khan Academy, which can get a little bit monotonous after a while. And so this is a picture we took 2 years ago. This is from the Los Angeles Summer School, where I'm part of. And this is just kids like you, just doing this work on a Sunday afternoon. So it used to be in person, but then pandemic hit, so everything became online. So we are doing it all online now. So every Sunday or Saturday, they all meet in a virtual classrooms like this, and they spend 1 hour doing it. That's it. There's no more homework or grading or anything like that. It's just fun. You work along with your other kids, do some work, and you give the output to the adult teacher. And there's some recognition. We try to make it interesting for our volunteers. So we track every hour they spend in a database, and then at the end of the year, based on how many hours that they accumulated, we apply for something called Presidential Volunteer Service Awards. And then if you accumulate certain number of hours, you get a nice little medal like this, right? And we also conduct other things like webinars, right? So every 3 months or so, we invite speakers to come and just talk about topics of interest to kids your age, right? So for example, next Sunday, we have this webinar by a 15-year-old, right? He is a stop motion animation filmmaker. And he's been doing a lot of like really interesting short films, really funny videos, all by himself, right? So we invited him to just come and talk about how he's doing it, what are the technologies he's using, and what's his process and things like that. So this is happening next week. So we try to do things like that so that as a community, we all learn and inspire each other. So if this is something of interest to you, there is a website, youngtranslators.org. There is also a Facebook page for it. So if you go there, yeah, you can read about all the different activities that we do and our process and so on, right? So it's my wish and the hope that some of you will get interested and want to participate. You don't need a lot of Tamil knowledge, right? So you may have gone to Tamil school, you may feel that, oh, I don't have a lot of Tamil skills. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of adults to help you. And it's all about doing a tiny little part, right? So you do a little bit part and then others will take over. And then you get better at it over time, right? That's the whole idea. So that's all I had to share today. I will stop here. And yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. It was very emotional when you started sharing, and my eyes got wet. This is not just about your technical background, but it was more about how you want the younger generation, not just with the education, but to be the person as a character development. It was so good. Thank you so much. And talking about the Tamil school, my friend, he was in your LA Tamil school with his son, and now he moved to Chicago. And when I spoke about it, he said, yeah, I know that person. He is such a down-to-earth person. He used to come to our Tamil school, and he teaches the kids so well. So yeah, you just proved it. Thank you so much. So for the Q&A session, we have Saivi. She is 11th grader, and she is into animation, and she aspires to be a person in that field. And she has a list of questions that she would like to ask you. And also I request all the participants to chat and ask the question, and she can be the moderator between you and the audience and get the question answered. Over to you, Shaivi. Thank you.
I had a question because earlier you mentioned that you were interested in technology when you were a kid, but I was wondering if you were ever interested in anything else other than that?
No. My first, I think, love was math. Yeah, Mr. Ashok was talking about MSc math. I think the story is basically my aunt was doing MSc mathematics. She was staying in our house in Coimbatore. So she was a big influence. So she would read those textbooks, and I will read it. I didn't fully understand all the time, but I was just like drawn to it, right? I was in I think middle school at that time. Yeah, so I was really drawn to it, and I was heavily influenced by Ramanujam. You guys may have known, he's a great Indian mathematician from Tamil Nadu, and it was his 100th celebration, 100th year celebration was going on around that time. So there was a lot of articles written about him. So I read his story. I was greatly influenced, greatly inspired through his story. So math was my first love. But then I was drawn towards science in general. And as I said, yeah, movies were not my first love at that time. I hated Tamil movies. There's a lot of crying involved, a lot of drama involved. My parents loved it, but I hated it. But yeah, it's an interesting twist that I gotten into movie industry. But yeah.
Shankaranko has a question. He says, how soon should someone prepare himself or herself if they want to get into the animation industry?
Sorry, can you repeat that again? It was a little bit unclear for me.
How soon should someone prepare themselves if they want to get into the animation industry?
How soon should they start preparing themselves? Yeah, okay. If you want to go as an artist, right? So artists can start anytime, right? So, artistic skills, it can be developed. I have seen people develop it, nurture it. It just, yeah, so it's a skill people start, doing like 2D drawing in a young age or digital art. So, if it is something that you like to do, if you want to do, tons of resources available, go to art schools, do projects, right? That's the best way to learn. Earlier the better, right? So it gives you more advantage over others. You can go to, a lot of artists that I see here, especially in the US, they just go to art school completely, right? So after high school, they go into traditional art schools, or nowadays there's a lot more vocational courses also available that takes you directly into movie industry, for example, right? There's things like Vancouver Film School, there's a Savannah College of Arts and Design and things like that. So where, they focus very much on a specific software that you need to learn, specific skills that you need to get a job and stuff like that. So they offer a little bit accelerated path. But there's also traditional art schools, California Arts and Technology, Cal Arts in LA is pretty popular. There's lots of colleges. Most universities have like a nice arts program, right? So as I said, for arts, what I have seen is I think the good schools matter, but also just their demo reel makes a huge difference. What they're able to achieve, during their academic career, all the different cool things that they have created, their experience basically, that makes a big difference.
Thank you, Uncle. The next question we have is, how is it like to work with Marvel Studios?
Marvel Studios, is that a question? Okay. They're an amazing company. They are amazing. They know how to make good movies. They know how to tell good stories, right? And Spider-Man was owned by Marvel. If you guys know, Sony got copyrights to it a long time ago. I think Sony made a good job of Spider-Man franchise, but all the other characters from Marvel, they made a great job. They brought all these characters to life. They are definitely very interesting to work with.
Thank you, Uncle. Next question is, can you please explain what the new tools still to be developed to support creative industries like movie making?
New tools, that's an interesting question. You just don't know. We don't know what the directors will want to do next, right? So some of you may have seen Spider-Verse movie, right? It came a couple of years ago. And the director came and he was a huge fan of just comics, 2D comics, right? And until then, all the CG movies had a specific look. They call Pixar look, right? So they all will look similar, CG movies. So he said he wanted to use, regular latest technologies and everything. At the same time, he wanted to have the look and feel of a comic book, right? So this was never done before, right? So we had to practically invent all the new tools to make that happen, right? So one example I can give you is in comic books. If you're a comic book fan, if you look at it closely, you will see these tiny dots on paper, right? So that's a artifact of the printing process, right? So like Spider-Man's or like the pictures will have these tiny like black dots. And this is something that, especially if you look at like older comic books, you'll see that more often than the newer books, right? But if you're a comic book fan, this is what you have grown up with, your collection of books, they all have it. So he said he wanted the movie to have similar kind of dots. So we had to artificially create these dots in the movie so that when you watch the movie, it's almost like the comic pages come alive, right? So things like that. You just never know what they will ask for. I need to create new tools to support it.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are the best animation apps and products to use to begin?
Yeah, depending on what you want to do, there's a standard software available. Maya, you may have heard of it. Maya is a package that's used for both modeling and animation. It's very popular. It's commercial though, you need to purchase it. If you're a student, you get for free, I think. There is free options available. There's something called Blender, right? So that's another 3D animation package that's becoming very popular. It's starting to be used in industries also. We are starting to use it personally in Sony. When it comes to other pipelines that we talked about, for lighting, for example, there's something called Katana. It's actually developed in Sony Pictures. It's becoming industry standard now. So that's used for lighting. For compositing, there's a product called Nuke, N-U-K-E, Nuke. That's a very powerful commercial software. But any of them all have like free open source tools available. So if you're starting out, if you just want to like try things, if you want to like see, what interests you, there's tons of free software available also. So don't go for the most professional software because they can get complicated to learn. Start with something simple, some simple free tool, just play with it. And then if you really like it, you can explore more.
Thank you. Our next question is, can you please explain the new buzzwords like NFTs, blockchain, etc., related to movie or artwork? What you think of these technologies' impact on creative industry?
Interesting question. I don't think blockchain or NFTs have made into our industry yet, to my knowledge. Trying to think. I don't think so. There's a lot of definitely newer technologies coming into our industry, right? So things like AI, machine learning, stuff like that, they're starting to use them. We are taking a look at it closely. We are starting to find applications. A lot of our movie making post-production is just manual labor, just a lot of manual labor, right? So it has gotten a lot more efficient, but still artists have to wait for a long time. There's a lot of physically, repetitive things that they do. So AI and machine learning have made a huge progress on that, right? So it has made, as an artist, you don't want to wait. You have this creative process, you want to go really fast, you have so many ideas in your head. So technology should be a supporter, not make you mad, right? But so you try to make them faster, you want to make them efficient, so that they go faster, they can iterate faster and stuff like that. But blockchain, other things like that, I don't think so, but it will be interesting to see, like maybe you kids will come in and you will invent some new application for that. We don't know, we'll see.
Thank you, Uncle. Our next question is, are there opportunities for internships for kids while still in high school?
High school, it's not too many, to be honest, but colleges, yes, for sure. At colleges, there's internship, like we take interns regularly at the colleges. There could be, again, depending on your demo reel, if you're an artist, right? So if you have a great demo reel, you can always try, you never know. But typically it's at the college level.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are the best steps to become an animator, and do you need to be good at art and drawing?
No, for animators specifically, the primary skill needed is acting. So if you can act, you can translate that, right? Or at least being able to appreciate the art of acting, right? So if you're able to understand the nuances of acting, right? When you watch a movie, if you are drawn to like all the facial expressions, all the body movements, and there's a lot of cultural implications too, right? So depending on where you grow up, right? That's why Hollywood has a hard time making Indian animated movies, because you can't take a American animator and make, like Indian epic. You can't do that, right? Because they don't get all the nuances. Same vice versa, right? So you can't take Indian animator to make, animated movie here that all the people here will appreciate. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to acting. So yeah, if you're an animator, if you want to be an animator, pay attention to acting, pay attention to how professional actors do, what they do, how they do it, what attracts you, what makes it so good. That's really important. The technical skills can be learned. You learn it. It's a process, and there's schools to do that and all that. But to become a great animator means you have to be a great actor, so to speak.
Thank you, Uncle. Our next question is, do they use reference photos to make animated art?
They use reference videos, yeah. So as I was mentioning before, a lot of times, like when given a shot, that's the first thing the animators will do. They will just, they'll close the door and they'll just shooting themselves, right? So they'll act, they'll take multiple takes, they'll show to their leads, They do a lot of things just by acting themselves, or they look at like other people acting. They get the timing right. The timing is the most important part, right? Timing, body language, other kind of stuff. If it is supposed to be a, dialogue and whatnot, they do that. If it is something else, if it is a, some other object moving and stuff like that, you have to use your imagination. But yeah, it's reference videos are often used.
Thank you. Our next question is, how can our SATS Youth Club associate with their nonprofit organization?
Yeah, so that's, if you guys are interested, we can do another session just for that, where we can actually go through the process. We can show you exactly how the process works, how the teams are organized, what's the role of young translator, what the teenagers do, what the adult volunteers do, what's the cycle. We have like a kind of quarter system, right? We meet in 4 different quarters each year, and it's about 10 weeks in length, right? And what different activities you can choose and what skills are needed, what skills you can develop over time. Things there's like a 1-hour presentation just like that. So we can go through that in a lot more detail. But yeah, just know that if you have gone through some Tamil school here, or if you have some basic reading or writing, that's all we need. We don't need too much Tamil skill, right? You're not writing a big novel or anything like that. So you're just doing a simple translation or simple sentence formation. Your vocabulary doesn't have to be great, just basic vocabulary. And there's tons of resources available, right? And beyond adults, we often give the machine translation for you to begin with, right? You don't even have to do that. So you'll take the English text, we'll automatically run through Google Translate. We'll give you a Google translated version, right? Your job is to take that and then improve it, right? So it's very accessible. Like we have kids as young as 13, 14 volunteering, and they don't have tons of Tamil knowledge, right? So don't think you need tons of experience, but everybody has a part to play, right? And you just start somewhere, you learn slowly, and then you become good at it. Some kids have been doing it for like 2 years, and they say this is a lot more interesting than going to Tamil school, for example, right? Because this is a project-based learning, right? There's variety involved. There's the satisfaction of somebody actually using it, right? And then when the TED video gets published, or the story Beaver story gets published on the internet, your name is attached to it, right? If that video is a hit, there's like millions of people watching, they will see your name. So there's a lot of personal satisfaction involved with it. So yeah, it's pretty accessible, and we can definitely go into a lot more detail if you guys want to do it.
Thank you. Our next question is, can coding be applied into animating or any other movie fields?
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, I mean, a lot of artists sometimes code, right? So they have slightly a lot of engineers become artists too, right? And when they work, oftentimes they'll find themselves doing repetitive work, right? And they'll start doing a little bit of scripting to help themselves, or they will write a little tool that will help themselves, right? Like a simple application, and they'll start showing it to other people, and other people will start using it. So a lot of tools that we use in our company is written by people, artists, right? So yeah, so if you have a technical background, but you want to become an animator or artist, there is a lot more opportunities available for you. There's a big demand for people like that. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Uncle. We're a bit past 2. Are you okay with more questions?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Our next question is, how long does it take to make a stop motion movie such as The Corpse's Bride?
Yeah, typically nowadays movies take about 18 months to 2 years, sometimes as little as 12 months, just on the production part. So the funny thing is, often the story development takes the longest time, right? So somebody will have a story, but it'll go through so many changes. So just getting the story right is the most critical part. That can take many years, depending on the studio. But once the story is fixed, once they have a green light from the studio, implementing or making that movie itself nowadays is pretty fast. They do as short as 12 months.
Our next question is, hold on. Technical careers inside movie industry is not well known to many. Do you think any tools can solve this and get them to be employed easily into the creative industry?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? I didn't fully get it.
Technical careers inside movie industries are not well known to many. Do you think any tools can solve this and get them to be employed easily into the creative industry?
Okay, if I understand right, are you talking about what technical tools can be created new?
Can be created to help employ people into the creative industry.
Oh, okay. So like what more tools can be created to employ more people, right? I think that's the gist of it. Yeah. So yeah, that's the perennial challenge, right? So there's tons of artists out there, but they often struggle with computers, right? Like I have literally seen people trained in traditional things like sculpting, right? And they have gone through 4 years, 5 years of college just working with clay. And they'll get hired in places like Sony. Right now, they have to transfer all that skill into computers using keyboard and mouse, and they literally cry. They hate it. But how do you help them? So the software needs to be as intuitive as working with, clay. It's not easy. So it's a very interesting engineering challenge. The UI, when you design for them, you can think them as like, your regular user. The artists think very differently. So it has to be super intuitive. It has to be, as natural to them as possible. So yeah, that's one of the biggest engineering challenges. Like, how do you make these tools so that anyone with the artistic talent, artistic skill is able to use your tool to work in the movie industry or any entertainment industry for that matter.
Thank you. Our next question is, how hard is it for immigrants to be in the entertainment industry? Was it hard or easy given your background?
No, our like movie industry, especially Hollywood, is made up of immigrants. It's made up. It's completely. So like if I go to any meeting, each one will be from a different country. So it really draws people from all around the world. People are drawn to movies, right? So it's just a very, very popular, people who, grow up watching movies, and a lot of people get interested from a very young age. And, it really attracts the best and the brightest from anywhere in the world, right? So they all come here to work on it. And it's, there's a lot of indigenous, effort also. There's a huge booming movie industry in India, right? For example, stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely not hard at all. There's obviously complications with visa and permits and stuff like that. But yeah, people have done it, and it shouldn't be a big barrier.
That's all the questions I think we have so far. Oh, never mind. How big of a team do you need to animate or make a movie?
So the team size can vary depending on the movie. So, and as I said, if it is a big blockbuster movie, it can literally be tens of thousands of people. Yeah, if you count them all, right? If you watch the credit scene at the end of the movie, the people that you see in the credit scene, it usually goes on for like 5 minutes. That's not all. There's tons more that worked on it who didn't get a credit in the movie, right? So it really takes a large number of people, but there's also a lot of indie studios where they make a movie with a very small number of people. People make movies just one person, right? They take their iPhone and then they do everything by themselves, and they edit it and they do voice. And yeah, so students make short films, they make feature length films, stuff like that. So yeah, it can be anywhere from 1 to tens of thousands of people.
Does anyone else have any questions? I think that's it.
Thank you, Saivi. Thank you, sir, for being patient, and happy to have you. And it was a pleasure for us. You've been so welcoming and very happy. Any words from you, Ashok, Shankar? And Shankar, kudos to you for bringing such a kind speaker to our session. And we got a lot of insights on this. Thanks to you, Shankar.
No problem. Thanks again, Kotlangu, to
Looks like there's an echo.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks again to Kotlangu sir to come and speak to us. It was very informative, and I hope all the kids got something out of this. And we look forward to more such collaboration. I know that he has other initiatives going on in LA. So maybe our Tamil Sangam here can get involved more in those and have more such conversations in the future. Thanks again.
Sure. So Ashok, this is a takeaway for us with whatever Kotlangan sir has told us. We need to see more opportunity to, in a way, how we can associate as an Tamil Sangam, as an organization with him, and how that can help our youth moving forward.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win situation for all of us here actually. So அவர் சொன்னது வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா தமிழுக்கும் சில ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டிஸ் அவர் லே அவுட் பண்ணியிருக்காரு பாத்தில். லைக் த எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ் ஹி கோட்டட் ஃபார் லைக் பேசிக் தமிழ் நாலேஜ் இருந்தால் கூட போதும். நம்ம குழந்தைங்க படிக்கிறவங்க வந்து தே ஆர் நாட் ஹேவிங் வெல் வேர்ஸ்ட் உரையாடல் ஸ்கில்ஸ் அண்ட் எழுத்துநடை அண்ட் உரையாடல் இஸ் என்டையர்லி டூ டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஜானர். லைக் என் பொண்ணு படிக்கிறப்பே நான் பார்க்குறேன், அது வந்து நம்ம பேசுறதெல்லாம் பேசிட்டு அவள் ஸ்கூல்ல வந்து சின்ன சின்ன வார்த்தைகள் அந்த எழுத்து நடையில இருக்கிறப்ப வந்து ஷீ ஸ்ட்ரகிளிங். அந்த கிராமட்டிக்கல் நியூஆன்சஸ் எல்லாம் கொஞ்சம் டிஃப்ரெண்டா இருக்கு. அவரு நீ அந்த அளவுக்குலாம் நீங்க கஷ்டப்பட வேணாம். பேசிக்கா உங்களுக்கு தமிழ் தெரிஞ்சாவே போதும். நீங்க கூகுள் டிரான்ஸ்லேட் will give you the first cut version. You just improve on it. He is giving a lot of opportunities for our window of opportunities for us to explore and contribute. And on another key important thing he said was like giving back to the society and not forgetting the roots. Those are all the key takeaways for us to remember ourselves and how we can கொஞ்சம் ஒரு நம்ம ஒரு வாரத்துல ஒரு 1 hour 2 hour இதுக்காக வந்து நம்ம யோசிச்சோம்னா we can make a huge difference. And ஆனா ஏற்கனவே கோட் பண்ண மாதிரி அவரோட democratizing educationங்கிற வீடியோல வந்து he has touched upon so many things that is so many informative and he has provided the solutions also on paths here actually. So we are looking forward, sir, to collaborate with you and however our kids can join and help your big visions in a small way as much as possible. Thanks a lot, sir, for coming and giving a lot of information for us.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Shankar, for inviting me, and thank you, everybody, team, to have this opportunity. கண்டிப்பா சிறுதுளி பெருவெள்ளம்னு சொல்லுவாங்க இல்லையா? அந்த மாதிரி நம்ம எல்லாருமே ஒரு சின்ன எஃபர்ட் போட்டால் போதும். நம்ம இங்கே இருக்கிறதுனால ரொம்ப பெருசாலாம் பண்ண முடியாது. நிறைய பேர் வேலையை விட்டுட்டு இந்தியாவில் போய் சோஷியல் சர்வீஸ் பண்ணுறவங்க நிறைய பேர் இருக்காங்க. ரொம்ப டெடிக்கேட்டடாக தே சாக்ரிஃபைஸ் எவ்ரி திங், தே give up the physical comforts and money and everything, and they do all of that. We don't have to do all that. No, it's not for everyone. பட் நம்ம இங்கே இருந்துக்கிட்டே நம்ம பண்ண முடியும். அதுதான் என்னுடைய ஒரு விருப்பம். எல்லாருமே பண்ணலாம், நம்ம குழந்தைங்க பண்ணலாம், மற்றவங்களை பண்ண வைக்கலாம். ஸோ அதைத்தான் வந்து நாங்கள் முயற்சி பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கிறோம். அது நான் மற்ற தமிழ் மட்டத்திலாம் போய் சொல்லும்போது இந்த ஃபஸ்ட்டு இதுதான் சொல்கிறேன். நீங்கள் வந்து ஏன்னா எல்லா குழந்தைங்கலாம் பயப்படுவாங்க. தமிழ் ஸ்கூல் வர்றதே எனக்கு வந்து ரொம்ப ஒரு கஷ்டமாக தான் இருக்குது. நான் ஏற்கனவே நிறைய பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கிறேன். பியானோ கிளாஸ் போகிறேன், சிங்கிங் கிளாஸ் போகிறேன், கராட்டே கிளாஸ் போகிறேன், இன்னொரு 1 hour ஆகணும் அப்படிம்பாங்க. இல்லை அப்படி நினைக்காதீங்க. நீங்கள் இதை வந்து நீங்கள் ஒரு சோஷியல் சர்வீஸ் நினச்சி பண்ணலாம், நமக்கு கிவிங் பேக்குன்னு நினச்சி பண்ணலாம். இல்லை எனக்கு இன்னொரு ஸ்கில் வருது, இன்னொரு ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி வருது, நான் அப்போ என்னுடைய மதர் டங்கை நான் ஃப்ளூயண்ட் ஆகுறேன், அதில் ஒரு ஸ்கில் வருதுன்னு சொல்லி நினச்சி பண்ணலாம். இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய பெனிஃபிட்ஸ் இருக்குது. அதை கம்யூனிகேட் பண்ணுறது தான் கொஞ்சம் சேலஞ்சிங்காக இருக்குது. பண்ணுறாங்க. ஒன்ஸ் அவங்க பண்ண ஆரம்பித்தாங்கன்னா வாட் ஐ ஹவ் சீன் தொடர்ந்து பண்ணுறாங்க. ஒன்ஸ் வி கெட் சம்படி டு ஸ்டார்ட் டூயிங் இட், தி டோன்ட் கிவ் அப். அந்த கிட்ஸு நான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு இந்த லாஸ் ஏஞ்சலஸ் தமிழ் ஸ்கூலில் பண்ணப்பவே ஒரு டவுட்டாக தான் இருந்தது. சரி வருவாங்க, ஒரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட்டில் பண்ணுவாங்க, விட்டுருவாங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லி பார்த்தா 2 years பண்ணிட்டுருக்காங்க தொடர்ந்து. ஸோ சம் ஆஃப் தம் ஹேவ் பீன் டூயிங் இட். தமிழ் ஸ்கூல்லாம் கிராஜுவேட் பண்ணி போனாலும் தொடர்ந்து பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கிறாங்க. ஸோ இட் இஸ், ஐ திங்க் தே கெட் அ லாட் அவுட் ஆஃப் இட். தே சீம் டு ஹேவ் ஃபன் வித் இட். அதனால் நம்ம சானிட்டரி தமிழ் ஸ்கூலில் இருந்து பண்ணாங்கன்னா நல்லாயிருக்கும். உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச other schools-லயும் சொல்லுங்க. We'll be happy to give you more information and more training for this also. But thank you for interest and support.
கண்டிப்பா. ரொம்ப நன்றி சார். Thank you so much. Thanks everybody. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. நன்றி. வணக்கம்.